Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I like to discuss how former Red Wall Tory MP Jonathan Gullis, known affectionately as Jonathan C. Gullis to his former students, is now reportedly so desperate for decent work that he's considering taking up the job of Nigel Farage's pet chimp. But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So Jonathan Gullis, Boris Johnson's former mascot, has been a bit down on his luck since being kicked out of Parliament after one term last year. He used to work as a teacher, if you can believe that. And unlike most other Conservative MPs leaving Parliament, actually attempted to return to his more humble former career. It would seem that despite his bravado and his own sense of self-worth, he understood that actually he has no value to any boardroom in the country. So he wanted to be able to keep a full stock of bananas in the house. He was going to need to find work as a teacher. But for months, he complained that he was sending off loads of applications but getting nowhere. I said at the time, why are you doing that, mate? You're just emphasising the fact that you're rubbish. Like, you can't even get a job for something you're qualified and experienced to do. Like, if I was sending off loads of applications, if I had an ego, right, and I was sending off loads of applications for a job and not getting anywhere, I don't think I'd be boasting about it. Now, I did say at the time, to be fair, teaching is quite seasonal. There's sometimes a year when you probably struggle. There are other times a year when there's loads of jobs in terms of vacancies. He was unlikely to find anywhere like last summer or autumn. But if he couldn't find a job this Easter, when it's like a bumper crop of vacancies, then he was going to struggle. Well, it seems he couldn't find a job this Easter. Oh, not to worry, however, as his redemption came in the form of Duncan Smith, the former Tory leader who was so bad at the job, his colleagues sacked him after just 2 years. And if that doesn't sound remarkable given what's happened in the last few years, this was at a time when the Conservatives tended to stick with their leaders for at least a full parliamentary term. But a couple of months ago, Duncan Smith, who inexplicably seems to be running a think tank, offered Gullis a job as a senior fellow. It was supposed to be his job to come up with educational policies, which is very weird for a right-wing think tank, if ever I saw one. Because the right-wing attitude towards education is essentially, well, look, you know, if you can afford to send your kids to private school, great. If not, well, why are poorer parents wasting their time sending kids to a classroom when they could be supplementing their slave wages by getting their offspring to dig for coal? I mean, for goodness sake, they keep complaining about the cost of living. You've got children. Send them to work. Send them to work. Stop complaining. Not really sure what Gullis was supposed to bring to the table here. And it seems that after just a few weeks in the role, Gullis has come to the same conclusion. He's obviously out of his depth and looking for an easier alternative. After all, people who work for a think tank presumably have to do some thinking from time to time. Thinking is not Gullis's superpower, should we put it that way. Bellowing and jeering is more his style. Ideally, he'd love a return to Parliament as the resident chimp. He may, once he have planned, to pop up somewhere a bit more Tory and hope to become a candidate in a constituency the Conservatives could expect to regain. I've talked about this before. After all, he's got the background. Unlike his mucker Lee Anderson, who, to give him his due, actually manoeuvred himself far more expertly to remain on the gravy train, Gullis has a proper Tory background. He was privately educated, but as his failure to get a job in a profession he's qualified for demonstrates, almost completely unemployable. Ideal Tory MP credentials. Only the Conservatives may not actually be making any gains at the next election. They could actually suffer greater losses with the way they're going. Gullis himself expressed frustration with Kemi Badenoch about a week ago that she was too lazy, which might sound a bit rich coming from Gullis, but I took it to be frustrating with his future plans. Like I said before the election, I imagined Gullis would probably accept losing his seat last year, but, you know, coming from a standard Tory background, would aim to reappear to be a candidate in a seat which, let's say the Tories narrowly lost, but would expect to regain after a few years in opposition. But it's just not happening. Yes, Labour are not exactly inspiring voters, but neither are the Tories. And where traditionally voters in many constituencies would just have to choose one or the other, and probably default back to the Tories in some places, well, now they've got Reform UK hankering after their vote. In fact, even if things don't carry on quite as they are, you know, as Labour start to unveil better workers' rights, best start centres, improvements to the NHS and so on, and there's big news later today on elections, Reform UK are still almost certain to be the party who make the most gains. I mean, I'm not going to suggest that even if Labour suddenly start powering up, Reform UK are going to go into the next election only expected to get a few seats again. It would seem incredibly unlikely that Reform UK would not at least gain dozens of seats at the next election, maybe more. So for a lazy entitled prick on the right wing, Reform UK starts to look like a bit of a gold rush, doesn't it? Gullis would probably stand a better chance of a parliamentary return with Reform UK than with the Conservatives. And his unique charms would fit quite well within the party. In fact, some of his supporters who happily flipped to Reform UK last year had expressed surprise he hadn't joined. But at the time, Reform UK were only ever likely to win a few seats, and Gullis would have imagined that once in opposition, the Conservatives would rebuild, start regaining seats at the next election. He just had to sniff around for a suitable one for himself. And sure enough, on Talk TV yesterday, the failing rival to GB News, Gullis, who keeps popping up on right-wing talk shows for some reason, said that he was finding Reform UK tempting. He said that he's felt politically homeless, which is always fake when people say that, by the way. It's certainly in this case. It's true that Gullis would feel entirely at home in Reform UK. But someone like that does not get to claim that they feel politically homeless in the Conservative Party when first Sunak and then Badenoch have positioned the party to be a piss-poor tribute band to Farage's outfit. The Conservative Party is now more similar to Reform UK than it ever was when he was an MP for them. What he means is he misses the easy money and the notoriety. I would say respect that comes with being an MP, but in his case, no, notoriety. So what's he doing? Well, if you ask me, what Gullis is doing here is applying for the role of Nigel Farage's pet chimp. He's got plenty of experience after all, braying and grunting racial slurs for Boris Johnson. He's seen Jake Berry join, knowing that Berry will get a crack at a winnable seat as part of the deal, maybe even the one that James McMurdoch may have to vacate, depending on how things go. And Gullis has decided that there might be a bit of a gold rush of Tories to join Reform UK if things keep going as they are, because what's probably happening at the moment is some Conservatives are just weighing up the options. For all they know, Reform UK will sort of collapse in the next year or two. So they're just biding their time. I think Gullis has decided he's getting nowhere with the Conservatives, and he could get a plum constituency if he joins Reform UK before the rush. But he doesn't just want to defect to Reform UK and then not get anything in return. So he's putting out the idea that he's available, he's wavering, in the hope that Farage gives him a ring and says, "Oh, Jonathan, got a job for you chimping in a seat where we're polling really well. How do you fancy it, mate?" That's what this will be about. He can't get a job as a teacher anymore. He's got no other skills. He clearly doesn't think he'll last in his think tank job because he just spends all his time eating the crayons. Parliament was easy for him. He just had to swan around being as rude as possible to large sections of the public and grunting in approval at his boss during the parliamentary debates. He's more than happy to do that under the affectionate wing of Nigel Farage in return for the sort of salary he couldn't possibly attract on the job market and a bigger slice of that big fat parliamentary pension. And with ample opportunities to visit banana packing plants in order to highlight terribly important issues of the day, but in the hope of getting some free samples for his efforts. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.